faceoff. Shoots it, deflected. Right in. Pietrangelo save, rebound. Stastny stopped by Pietrangelo. I don't believe that save. Neither does Peter Stastny. He can't believe the save that Pietrangelo just made on him as Frankie sparkling on that maneuver there to stop and rob Peter Stastny. He should get 5 to 10 for that.
Hello and welcome to episode 86 of Tendy Talk, presented by the Hockey Podcast Network and the BLPA Podcast Networks. I'm your host Joe, better known as Wash Up Goalie on social media. This week I chat with brothers Mike and Josh of the Pillow Talk by CWGA podcast. This is a fun one as I get to the bottom of their podcast and why they started it. So without further ado, let's get to the conversation with Mike and Josh. Hey, fellas, thanks for joining me on the podcast. It's fun to get you on here and talk some podcasting and goaltending and anything else that comes up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, and we won't talk Packer football now that your brother's in Wisconsin because that's just depressing.
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
Wow.
It's been a tough one for me, that's for sure.
Yeah, my daughter is a Packer fan, and I don't appreciate it. But it's because she watches the games with my father-in-law, and he grew up in International Falls before the Vikings were around. So the only option at that time for him were the Packers. So it's like, okay, it makes sense for him. I can't be too upset that my daughter likes the team she watches, or with her grandpa, because that's why I'm a Bears fan. I grew up in Chicago, and I would watch games every Sunday with my grandpa. So there's that emotional connection, even though the team's been terrible. But it's like, God, the Packers. Like I feel like I'm failing as a parent every time she comes downstairs wearing her Aaron Rodgers jersey.
Well, I think it's a step in the right direction that you're still calling her your daughter.
Yeah, well, she
that's
does
at least good.
She does like the Cubs and the Blackhawks. So like I got 2 out of the 3. That's why she's still my daughter.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. There is that side of it. So, before you hopped on, your brother was saying, you guys both grew up playing your hockey in Princeton, not too far from me. In fact, my first job out of college was working on the newspaper in Forest Lake, and we had a paper up there in Princeton and Malacca. And every now and then, me and those two guys, we would say, hey, I got this game, state tournament time is when we really helped each other out. The fellow up in Malacca really liked covering wrestling, so he would go there, and he's like, all right, but I got these 2 swimmers at the swim meet. Can you go over there? As he can. And so we were always helping each other out in that regard. So are you guys both goalies or just the one of you?
Yeah, so I chose goalie right out the gate. And Mike was actually a skater up until recently, and we'll forgive him. He made the switch over. But yeah, I've been true to the craft since the beginning.
Yeah. So let's back up a little bit then before we even get into why both of you became goalies. How did you get started in the game? I mean, you grew up in Minnesota, and especially up in a place like Malacca, winter, there's the outdoor rinks, but what drew you to the game of hockey?
Yeah, I'll take over this one, Mike, here. So, it's really the classic Minnesota story. Our grandma lived on a lake near Monticello, so we grew up skating. We probably skated out of the womb. And our dad was a big hockey guy. So, I just remember watching hockey growing up. Like, there was never football on in the household when we were younger. And I think
because it was the only option was to watch the Vikings. So,
right. But those were tough years, because we didn't have the North Stars and, the Wild weren't on the scene yet. So, we ended up watching a lot of different teams. But I think the second Dad could enroll us in mini mites, that's where we were. And it just took off from there.
So, you bring up a good point that I think some people forget about with Minnesota. I mean, there's a generation, a small one, but a generation there that, there were no North Stars. The Wild weren't around. You didn't even have Winnipeg to cheer for. Who was your team at that time? It couldn't have been the Hawks because Stars fans hated the Hawks. Couldn't be the Blues because they didn't like him, but not as bad as the Hawks. So, I mean, who were you guys kind of pulling for at that time?
I feel like that's when college hockey was really just kind of at the forefront of a lot of things. Like everyone just cared about like the U or just as college hockey seemed like the big thing.
Yeah. And, I like that you say that, because when I started going to school down at St. Mary's, it was the first year the Wild were playing, but the Gophers were really still that team. Like everybody cared about Gopher, Friday, Saturday night, it was the Gopher game. And, internet existed back then. I'm not going to say I'm that old that it wasn't around, but it's like after our varsity games on Friday, Saturday night, it's like, hey, anybody know the Gopher score? It was always trying to find, because some of my teammates, they had, high school buddies that were playing for the Gophers at the time, but then, St. Cloud and, Bemidji and all those schools, is like people were following them. And I think we missed that now in Minnesota, is how big college hockey was. I went to a Gopher game 2 years ago. It was right before COVID, and like the student section was terrible. We had bigger student sections at St. Mary's, and we had a student body of 1,200. It's like It was almost sad that it's not as big as it once was.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our paternal grandpa had at least some sort of season tickets. I just remember growing up, we would go to a lot of Gopher games. Those are probably my closest memories of organized hockey. But after that, I think I maybe cheered for the Red Wings a little bit. And it more had to do with Osgood than anything, if we're going to go there. But
and we can go there, because you know what? Even as a Hawks fan, I appreciated Osgood. I think he gets a raw deal in the Hall of Fame discussion. I'll fight tooth and nail and say he belongs in the Hall of Fame. A lot of people say, well, look at the team in front of him. Well, the team in front of him isn't that good,
right,
if he's not back there. They knew they could take chances because he was back there. Now, if you got somebody else in the net, they're not taking those chances. They're not scoring those goals. But yeah, Osgood, I liked him best when he was in Long Island. I didn't like him when he was in St. Louis. Didn't like him when he was in Detroit. But I have an appreciation for him, that's for sure. Yeah. So, Josh, you decided to start playing goalie. What was the reason? Was it more just there wasn't one, and hey, somebody needed to get in the net, or what was it?
Yeah, I mean, listening to a lot of your episodes back, I think my reason is a little bit more unique in the way that growing up, our dad has never had vision in his left eye. He was born with some sort of medical condition where his eye turned to bone. So whenever he would talk to us about when he would play hockey as a young kid, he always wanted to play goalie, but he was never good at it because he didn't have the depth, or the reaction, because he only had the use of his right eye. And so whenever, we'd sit in the car for 30, 40 minutes and talk about hockey, it was always, Dad wanted to be a goalie. So I skated out the first practice, and then the second practice, coach was like, anyone want to play goalie? And I was just like, let's do it. And because of that, because I was like, Dad's my idol. I want to do what Dad wanted to do. So let's strap him on. And I never looked back.
But then your brother, because I'm just not saying the mustache makes you look older, but I'm guessing you're the older brother. So it wasn't the classic, I'm the younger brother that got thrown in there. So, but that makes sense. And then, Mike, you come around and you didn't want to follow in your big brother's footsteps right away.
I think I did. Yeah. It was the Tendy house for sure, because you got Dad just always loving goalies, brothers playing goalie. I remember playing a few games as goalie, and I just couldn't sit still. I couldn't do it. I was way too hyperactive. I mean, still to this day, like the best part of my game has always been my skating, and I just love skating way too much to sit in the net.
Well, some people, I hate when they tell me that, oh, you're a goalie, you don't do much skating. It's just like, yeah, we do. We just do it in a confined area.
Yeah, it's just way different. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's way different. And one of these days, I'm going to learn how to move when I'm, the way kids move today when they're down in the butterfly on their pet. I can't do that. When I was learning to play the position, we were being taught skate saves and 2-pat stacks. So
yeah,
like I don't have it in me, that footwork. But the way kids play the position now, yeah, that skating's there. It's just in a different way.
Yeah.
But you play goalie now.
Mhm.
What was it that you were like, I've been doing this wrong my whole life. It's time I do it right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always been like something, especially, I took quite a few years off of hockey after like getting out of college and leaving Minnesota and everything, and just started getting back into it. And I think there was just there's something about it that I always loved the conversations that my brother and dad had about playing goalie, and always like had such a huge respect for just the position, and obviously growing up around some goalies and playing on teams, it's like you always just have respect for goalies. And just seemed like I was like, hey, you know what? I'm getting older. I'm getting tired. It seems like a position in which like I could get injured a little less in, and which has been, I don't know, maybe just different kinds of injuries I've been dealing with since playing goalie. But I don't know. It was just like, it just felt like time. It was like time to just put the pads on and see what it was like. And yeah, it's been just like super, super fun to learn the game in a whole different way.
Now, have you two played against each other yet?
No, we haven't. I obviously live in Wisconsin. Mike still lives in Denver, but it's kind of funny. My wife and I had our first kid about a year ago, but my dad's screensaver on his phone is Mike in goalie path. So you can kind of tell how we rate.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we've skated. I mean, we shared the ice earlier this summer, just doing some coaching and stuff, but we haven't played anything like competitive for quite some time.
Yeah,
you'll have to find a weekend tournament somewhere and just do it for that reason.
Yeah, so someone's got to stop having a broken arm before they can do that. But
hey, we all have excuses.
And that's what they are, excuses.
Yeah,
I'm almost recovered. I'm feeling
as the brothers used to tell us in high school, is we all have excuses are like buttholes. We all have them, and they all stink. Now they may have said things a little differely, but that was the gist of it. And I was like, okay, yeah, fair enough, guys. Yeah. So, you guys grow up in this hockey-centric family. Grandpa's got the tickets to the Gophers, which is great because for, as we said, a long time, you couldn't get a ticket. When I first moved here, I wanted to go to Gopher games, but there just weren't tickets. And now it's like you can go every game if you want. Then you guys start playing, skating the ponds, and you're still playing, and you decide, hey, let's start talking about the position and let's start this podcast. Like, where did that come from?
I think it started a lot from just I started playing goalie and started calling Josh every single time I was on the ice, and I was like, hey, I have no idea what I'm doing. I need so much help. And we just were having conversations, like really long conversations about the position and about the logistics of it. Your angles, how you're playing the puck, all these things, and trying to figure it out, and then talking a little bit more in depth about the game. And Josh actually had the ideas like, hey, maybe we should start recording these conversations and putting them out there.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I've been a goalie coach for probably 10 years or so now. After I stopped playing, I started coaching in the cities with Stauber's goal crease, Mega in Blaine, Velocity in Eden Prairie. And then when we moved to Wisconsin, there was no goalie coaches over here. So I just started my own company, and I think about goalies 24/7. I'm with kids on the ice all the time. And as brothers, me and Mike actually were quite close growing up. And, now that we're a bunch of states away, we try to stay in touch as much as possible, and talking about hockey was just another excuse to catch up with his life. And I've got a lot of opinions and suggestions on the position, and Mike somehow wanted to hear about that. So yeah, we would call and send each other drills on social media and all this stuff, and then he started recording himself and sending me those amazing videos that that we need to share more of. But
I'm just slightly better now, just slightly.
When I was a contractor at 3M, we had a term, better than bad.
Yeah.
You're definitely better than that. I think so.
No, that's cool. And it's nice that, Mike, as you started the position, like you had somebody to talk to, because there's so many beer league goalies that don't have anybody to talk to. Yeah, there's this whole plethora of YouTube videos. In Goal Magazine is a great resource. There's all those tools, but to actually talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm experiencing this. I notice, as I try and push off, this is what I'm feeling. What am I doing wrong? Or even, to your point, sharing the videos. Yeah, there's platforms out there where you can send in your videos, but you got to pay an arm and a leg for it. So it's nice that you do have that resource. And, Josh, I mean, we're goalies. We just like to talk about this position. So it's like anybody that's going to listen to me and think I know what I'm talking about, even better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's been great too, like, because I play in a couple leagues, and I still skate out in one and play goalie in another. And even like skating out is great, because I can, the goalie that's in the net is a newer goalie, and it's like great to even share stuff there too, because it's it's kind of fun between periods. He'll skate up to me and be like, all right, like, what should I have done here? What should we do? And we get to talk, goal a little bit kind of in between periods. And it just like expands the game more. Since
you've been playing goalie, when you do play out, have you noticed your defensive game change any? Kind of playing that offside, back door for the goalie a little bit, picking up on those things? Or are you still, no, I'm going to be Wayne Gretzky and just play the opposite side of the red line? Yeah, I mean, I've never been much of a defenseman, so I don't think that part of my game has changed a lot, honestly. There's a head shaking no from your brother there. Yeah, that part hasn't changed. I will say the goal scoring has increased for sure. Like, there's a lot of things where I'm like, oh, I know exactly how, like, the shots that are really hard for me to save, and I know exactly what I hate facing, and then I'm like, oh, those are the shots I'm trying to take now. And it just like, I'm like, wow, I'm scoring way more goals now. This is great. Well, that's a great point that I don't think a lot of people, when goalies are at the bench trying to tell their teammates, oh, try this, try that. They're like, what do you know? You're a goalie. It's like, well, yeah, but I'm seeing what the other goalie's doing. And, so you're starting to pick up on that. And, I always have the thing, if you can't see the goalie shoot the pucks, if you can't see him, he can't see you. And my teammates are like, no, we want a clear lane, and we want at least 35 seconds of that clear lane before we're going to shoot. And you know what? We have to toe drag around 4 guys before we can shoot too. But no, that's a great point of just starting to see things. And, are they cheating? Are they, holding their glove down low and, try and shoot high? We got a kid on our team, younger kid. He used to play goalie, but he still wanted to keep skating. And my team already had a goalie, so he started playing out. He's like, I love this. He won't play goalie now. Like, he sold his equipment. He's like, no, it was great the first year. He was kind of on the fence, so I missed a game, and he was able to fill in for me. He's like, no, that's the last game I ever played. And I was like, Jesus, kid. But he's one of our top goal scorers for that reason. Like, he sees the net differently than the rest of the players because of that. It's almost a shame that at the younger levels, they don't make kids play goalie a little bit more than just in mites. I think there could be some benefit in Squirts making them do it again. And I agree with you too. Skating is fun, and that's where working summer hockey camps is where I got my skating in. Is get those big C cuts. It's just something about skating circles and doing that crossover and pulling in. It is fun. I will agree. And it's a lot harder with leg pads, especially modern leg pads. I mean, old ones were big and bulky, but the modern ones with the thigh rise, it's so much harder to skate in than it used to be. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think the pressure thing too is a big thing with a lot of guys who I see used to play goalie. They're like, oh, I just like skating out now. It's easier. I don't have to think as so much. Or it's like you don't feel the pressure every single game when you're playing beer league or whatever. It's like you can just get out and have fun.
Maybe I'm playing beer league wrong, so I never feel pressure.
Like my teammates is a competitive nature for me. I don't know.
I have pressure I put on myself, but my teammates are like, "You showed up, awesome." Like that's the most pressure on me is like if I can't make a game, I better be able to find myself a sub. That's the pressure I have in the beer leagues, But I've said on the podcast before, our philosophy is if nobody gets hurt and there's beer in the locker room, it's a victory. We don't care what the scoreboard says. Yeah. So, we're just out there to have fun. But there is that competitive side. But I don't know how far you guys played, but I did play Division III JV hockey. I made it up to there. So there was that competitive fire in me. Mm-hmm. And when I first started playing beer leagues, I would get so upset after games. Like, I let in 8 goals. Well, 2 were my fault, because 4 of them were backdoor passes that I had no shot on, and this whatever. And it wasn't until I was listening to the old Goalie by Garmin podcast. I don't know if you guys ever found those, but he was a goalie coach out of the Colorado area. He's now, I think, the GM of the Chicago Steel. And one of his episodes, he would just record them on his way to the rink. So they're like 10, 12 minutes long, super short, which is awesome. But, he kind of talked about worrying about the things you can control versus those you can't. Like, you can't control the fact that you're playing beer league and your teammates don't know how to defend the backdoor post.
Yep.
But you can take care of how you respond to that. Like, okay, like that was a nice goal. I did what I could to stop it and it wasn't enough. Okay, that's cool. That kind of changed my outlook of beer league hockey right there. It's like I can still be competitive, but I have to be competitive against myself and not the scoreboard.
Yeah, that was the psychology of goaltending. It was something that our father always talked about. He's a man of the cloth now, but in his early days, he was a hockey psychologist for me growing up, and he would have his Kevinisms, where he would say, control the things you can control, but he'd say it like this. He'd say, "Be a duck. When water hits a duck, it rolls off the back. It doesn't sink into the feathers." So
very Ted Lasso of be a goldfish.
Yeah. These are the conversations that Mike's talking about, hearing me and Dad, where he'd just be in the car for 20 minutes and tell me how to be a duck.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's funny you say that because there are times where in my game something bad happens. I'm like, all right, be a goldfish. It's in the past. Move on.
Short memory.
Yeah, I use that with my kids too. My son plays baseball, and it's like he has a bad inning. I'm like, be a goldfish, but go out, have it. It's one inning at a time. That's when I had Pete Fry on. He was talking about different things because he's the goalie mindset guy, and I don't think Pete and I talked about this specific aspect, but I know other goalies that he's worked with have said, he said, don't look at the clock as, a 20-minute period. Break it up into 2-minute periods. And that, sometimes that, and I've started doing that in my game, and that makes a big difference. It's like, all right, let me get through the next 2 periods of just making the saves I need to. Not stopping everything, making the saves I need to. And that has changed the game. Now, the one thing Pete told me to do was not look at the clock at all and see how quick the game went. I felt like it was an 8-hour game when I did that. But I understand for some boys it makes it easier, but I'm just one of those guys. I need to see that clock. I need to know where we're at in the game. I don't know about you guys, but I always need to know what's going on that scoreboard.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely need to do that. I mean, sometimes there are games where you almost have to break it down shot by shot. You're like, I just have to save the next one. But one of my coaches back in when we played for the state championship in Bantams, he said you just have to be one goal better than the other guy, and that really took a ton of pressure off me. It doesn't matter, if you get scored on 8 times, if you get scored on 9, you still win the game.
That was the 80 Islanders. Grant Fuhr said, I would let 6 or 7 in, but I knew they were going to score 8 or 9, and I needed to stop those ones when it mattered.
Yep.
Now, Mike, for you, how has that been on the psychological side? Because it is tough being that new goalie, as an adult. I think a lot of times the adult goalie is kind of like the adult that goes back to college, in their 30s or 40s, and they get more out of it. Do you have that pressure on yourself to, try and get a shutout every game, or is it more just, these are the things I can work on?
Yeah. Well, I'm a proud member of the Zero Shutout Club, so I don't have to worry about that one. It's been tough. There's been me and Josh have had a ton of conversations about this. There are times, obviously, when you're just like in that flow state and you're just feeling like the puck's a beach ball and you're just making all these saves and you can see so well and your angles are you're tight and you're just like every rebound you're controlling, and it's like you leave the rink those days feeling like you're floating on a cloud. It just feels incredible. You're like, wow, nothing can touch me. I feel amazing. And then, I had a game this I don't know, maybe a couple months ago, and I sent a text to Josh. I was just like, have you ever been scored on so many times you just question your entire existence? And just like the crushing weight of having like 11 goals on the scoreboard and just being devastated by it. And I've always tried to be someone, and we had a conversation on a podcast about just kind of like that post goal ritual. What are you doing to kind of like control the emotions, control your thought process, and get right back into the game? And I think that's been a good practice, but a lot of it might just be that like self-competitive nature of like, if I'm going to do something, I want to be the best at it that I can be. So I tend to be kind of hard on myself, and I let, for goals, it's like, I'll let myself think about it for 10, 15 seconds until that next puck drops and you have to forget about it. But yeah. And then I've always had this post-game ritual. I mean, even when I played other sports like baseball or whatever, is always like, I can think about it for that day, but as soon as I wake up the next morning, it's over. But yeah, it's a total different mental challenge for sure.
Yeah. And there's going to be those games where you let in 9, 10, 11 goals, but you feel like they got lucky to score 1 or 2, I've had those games where the team's up 8 goals, but you're just playing awesome. I had a game, I think it was last year. I had like 58 shots in the game. I think we lost 9-2. And it was in the third period. And just make this save. And at this point, it was probably 8-2. And the guy looks at me and goes, come on, can't you let me have one? And I looked at him and I said, look at the scoreboard. Don't you have enough already? And he's like, I didn't realize. He's like, you're playing so good. I didn't realize that was the score. There's going to be those games too where they're putting the points up on the board, but they still feel like they're getting lucky if they get one, and you're frustrating them. So, you just got to stick with it. And your philosophy too of, you can't be upset about it the next day is good. And I've had to adopt that. And it's rare that I'm upset about a goal. The only one that has gotten me recently that the next day I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I set a GoPro up behind that. It started probably 3-4 years ago when my son was a Cub Scout. He had to do a project and make a video. And so we set it up and did something. It's like, oh, this is kind of cool. So I kept doing it. And I've actually been able to improve my game and pick up on certain things. But plays just outside the blue line. We had one referee, so I'm always sympathetic when we always only have one referee.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough deal. This particular ref was horse crap all night long. Like, to where both teams are like, this is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
The ref clearly didn't want to be there. There was a fight in the game before, and that game they actually had two referees. Well, she clearly wasn't good in that game either, because the players were just berating her as she was getting off the ice. And so I'm trying to be nice to her throughout the game, making sure if it's an icing, I'm making sure it's going all the way back to her, picking up puck, all of that. Third period, they're coming down, not even coming down. They're just outside the zone, and she doesn't have a view of the net at all. She can't see. She's screened. They dump it in wide of the net, but it gets the back part of the net, and she just sees the net move, and she calls it a goal. But the thing was, the way it pounced off the board and came out, either A, it went through the net, so you have to check that, or B, it didn't go in. And even players from the other team are like, it didn't go in the net, it went wide. And she's like, nah. And I'm pleading my case to her. I was like, explain to me where the hole in the net is. And she's like, I don't see one. I was like, well, then how did the puck stay in play afterwards? And she's like, I don't know. I was like, because the puck didn't go in the net. And she's like, she looks at me, she goes, well, what do you want me to do about it? I said, do the right thing and say it wasn't a goal and have a face off right there. I said, the other team says it didn't go in. My teammates say it didn't go in. You're the only person on the ice saying the puck went in the net. And she's like, it's a goal. Thank God the game wasn't a 1-goal game. I don't even remember if we won or lost, but it was didn't care. And my thing is again, it's a tough job reffing, whether you have two refs or not, whatever level you're at, it's tough, especially at the youth level, because parents are terrible.
Oh yeah.
But at the beer league level, we are paying these refs. They're making, we're skating at 9-10 o'clock at night. I get it. But they're getting paid to be there and to provide a service. So at least give minimal effort, not no effort. That was my thing in that one. I think that's what bugged me the most, was the lack of effort, and just kind of I've already got my paycheck anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But the next day I woke up and I had to laugh about it. I was like, are you kidding me? So I saved that little clip, and I may have posted it on my Instagram, goal or no goal, you tell me. Yeah, I put that one on the GGSU message board too, and it was I tried making it very clear, I was not trying to pick on the referee at all. Just hey, this is a pretty bad call. And clearly there were some refs who are also goalies in that forum, and they hopped all over me. And I was just trying to be hey, no, I get it. I was just we're supposed to be able to share things here that are oh my God, this is ridiculous. Yeah. And that's what it was. And they got a little butt hurt. And so I was okay, well, if you're going to be that way, now I'm going to flip the switch and go into why I am upset. You're getting, and other people are yeah, you guys are getting paid. You should some effort. I don't care that it's 11 o'clock game. You took it for the, $50, $80, whatever. I don't know what they get. But yeah, so we're goalies. We get off track. Your podcast, you guys alluded to it a little bit. First of all, what's the name of it so people can look it up?
Yeah, Mike and I workshop this quite a bit. The name of our podcast is Pillow Talk, and it's by my company, which is Central Wisconsin Goalie Academy. So we thought about talking about the gear and how they're called pillows, and landed on Pillow Talk. So.
Well, and it's very important that when you are searching for it, and right now you guys are only on Spotify, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
But when you look for it, you have to put the by CWGA. Otherwise, you're going to get other podcasts that you may or may not be interested in, but they're a different topic.
A little different. They're a little different.
Yeah, we have a diverse listener base for sure.
Nice. But you guys just had Charles from Bone Jet Designs on. I was listening to that last week while I worked, and he's an awesome guy. I was telling you, Josh, before we started, he and I kind of connected a couple years back, and I just love what he's done with his art and how other people have taken to it. His build a goalie magnet sets now are pretty awesome, where I might have to get one of those here pretty soon. Yeah. In fact, his coloring book, I'm not taking credit for it, but when the pandemic started and everybody was staying home, he started, with some of these line drawings. And I had asked him, if I could post one on my blog. And he's like, oh, that's a great idea, because I was doing homeschool art with my kids. And it's like, that's a good idea. So he gave like 4, I forget how many, like maybe 5 or 6 that I wanted to put on my blog. And I was like, Charles, you need to have a coloring book. Like this would be fun. And so now he just put out his second one, I think. So yeah, people need to go to his website. They need to buy some of his art. They need to get their coloring books. Although when I bought the first one, because there's an Eddie Balfour one in there, I scanned the pages so I can color them multiple times. Because I don't want to just color it once and be done. I want to, be able to do it a couple times.
That's just smart right there.
Yeah. But part of me is like, if I'm Charles, I'm saying, no, Joe, you just need to buy multiple coloring books. But I'm not sending it out to other people. It's just for my own use. So it's kind of like the old VHS days. Like, you cannot make copies to redistribute.
Right.
Yeah. So the premise behind Pillow Talk, as you guys mentioned, was really the two of you talking about the position, and just kind of the idea behind it, the different techniques. So you're still early on. How many episodes have you had out now?
I believe the last one was 7.
7. So you guys are closing in on, I think it's the average podcast makes it to 12 episodes. So when you guys get to episode 12, you need to celebrate. I know I did. Because it's like, okay, I made that milestone of getting past 12. But yeah, the first few I've listened to, they're good. I like them. I also like that there's more for goalies to listen to. There's a couple good goalie podcasts out there. In Goal, I think everybody's going to agree is the best one to hear about the position. And they get all the best guests.
Right.
But, outside of that, and, there's not many goalie-centric podcasts. So we need more of them. And so I'm happy to see that there is another one out there. And it's different at the same time. I'm talking to goalies, but it's different, which is good.
Yeah, we definitely went into it without having any expectations of a format the only thing we know we wanted to do was do video, because if a ton of people haven't done any research, Mike used to have a pretty successful camping outdoors podcast called Trail Boys. So Mike's done some podcasting in the past, and it was something I always wanted to do with him, but I wasn't a big outdoors guy, so that didn't really work. But so when we started doing all these calls, I'm always kind of thinking about doing stuff for the business, and I'm like, I've got a lot of youth goalies that probably don't have a lot of outlets for other, goalie talk. And I believe there's a big problem in youth hockey where goalies kind of get put on an island and they don't have any support. So we kind of wanted to do something different that was fun, could be listened for everybody. So, it's not like a Spit and Chicklets, and it's not like, a bigger podcast, but we do a lot of different stuff. We talk about a lot of different topics. We try to make it, fun and talk about, some gear and do our little games and stuff. And some of that's just for us, because we enjoy it. But, I've got moms and dads of the goalies I coach come up to me and say, we love your podcast because you guys don't curse. It's family friendly. Our son, our daughter, or whoever loves listening to it on the way to practice. And that's what we really care about and what we like. And, if you can learn something along the way, then that's a bonus.
Yeah, I think we've all had,
I try not. Go on.
Oh, sorry. I was saying, I think we've all had, we all have people growing up who drive us to and from the rink. Like we all have had those. those people who support our passions and our game. And I know we really valued those conversations with our parents and talking about the game to and from practice and games and all that. And that's kind of a big part of it too, is just those conversations around the game and how it applies to just more than hockey. Because, we don't spend 24 hours on the ice. We spend an hour on the ice, most of us. And there's so much more that you can apply to the rest of your life. And I think there was a big thing. There was a big realization that I came to after starting to play goalie after a while and starting to have the first few conversations with Josh and realizing like, oh, wow, is this why you've always been so like calm, cool, and collected about everything in your whole life? Because you had to deal with this always. Yep. And I think that's a big part of the podcast too, is just kind of harkening back to all those conversations that we had with our parents and such to and from the rink.
Yeah. Well, and Josh, to your point, I try not to curse on my podcast for the same reason. Is I know there's youth goalies listening to this, and I know there's some that listen with mom and dad on the way to the rink. I've had dads tell me that, and it's like they don't. Some of the guests have cursed, but it's like we keep it to a minimum when it does happen. And I think in today's day and age, I'm okay with that, because some kids, it's like you're going to hear it at some point, probably from mom and dad anyway.
I mean, we're hockey players, for God's sake. Yeah. It's kind of it's a second language after a while. But
wasn't it Gordie Howe who said all hockey players are bilingual? They're fluent in English and cursing. But still trying to keep it a little family friendly in that regard. And then Mike, you pointed something out too. Is like what we do on the ice and even talk about is life lessons that go beyond the ice. And I was having this conversation with my wife, and she even said, she's like, when I'm hiring people, I prefer to hire athletes, because there's just something. It's not that we're better, well-rounded people, but there's just something about the way we think and the way we behave. And if we, she works with a lot of salespeople. If they lose a sale, it's not the end of the world, and their feelings are hurt. They're like, okay, what do I got to do next time? Because we inherently, if you're playing sports, you're going to fail. You're going to fail a lot. So you get used to it, and you know how to bounce back. But at the same time, you're coachable. And I've said this in interviews myself. It's like, I've been an athlete my whole life. So when you're telling me something, I know you're not telling me I'm a bad person. You're just saying, hey, try this and see if the results are different. It's constructive criticism. And I think we're seeing more and more kids and aren't getting that. Or if they are getting coached, it's do what you feels right. Not you did it wrong. That's as I'm raising my kids, I'm trying to make it a point to make sure I let them know that they're not the best person in the world. They're not unique. My son will, if somebody asks him, what does your dad call you? He'll be like, he calls me a moron a lot. But it's like, at this point, he knows it's more of a term of endearment at this point. But I got that from my mom. My mom usually called me butthead. She's like, what are you doing? So it's kind of the same thing with my kids. It's like, you got to knock them down a little bit so they're somewhat humble.
That's true.
Yeah. So I want to be mindful of time. You guys have listened to some of the episodes, so I end everyone with a list of 10 questions. They're the same 10 questions I've asked every single guest. And the first one is, what's the craziest coaching moment from your playing days? And you guys played in Princeton, so I know there has to be some.
You want to start or should I start?
The Rolodex is just spinning in my head. So if you got one, you go for it.
I'll start. So we had this coach. It was in Pee-wee's. Crazy guy. Really intense. Really wanted to win. He played in the NHL for the Blues. Man, he also ended up coaching one of our other friends at a different place, but he ended up getting fired from Princeton. And there was a practice that we had, where he was so upset about a game before he ended up like lining us all up and taking shots at us. Definitely a memorable and I would say traumatic experience, but yeah, I think
But
about
you're better
that,
for it.
Yeah, maybe. The jury's still out.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that, Mike. So that was good.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should talk about the coach that we called Jesus or he was never my coach, but I think I gotta talk about my buddy's dad, Myron, who was my coach growing up. Logan was on the podcast. His dad, Myron, was our youth coach for a long time, and there was a practice that we had where we were doing a bunch of skating drills, and Myron said something to the effect of like, if I hear anyone, we were talking too much in the lines, and so he was like, if I hear anyone else say a peep, you're going to skate the rest of practice. Well, I just at the end of at the goal line just go peep, and we skated for like 45 minutes, and it was all my fault. He called my bluff.
Well, and the joke was on you because not only did you have to skate for 45 minutes, but you had to do it with goalie equipment on.
I was a good skater as a goalie, so
yeah,
true.
Yeah, I prided myself on being a good skater as well, and my coaches were always amazed at how good of a skater I was and how fast I was.
Yep.
And we would do a drill, we called it catch the dog, and everybody be on the goal line, and then you'd have one skater on the blue line. Coach would blow the whistle. You have to skate a full lap. Mm-hmm. And if anybody caught the dog, then they were the dog next, and it was just kind of this, deal. Well, I always raised my hand. I wanted to be the dog. And I always had everybody until I had to make that turn in goalie skates.
Oh, yep.
And it was like, everybody makes that tight turn around the net, and I'm taking the whole ice. But eventually I figured, like, once I got behind the net, if I dug my left heel into the ice, I could kind of turn tight. Once I figured that one out, I would beat about half the kids the rest of the way. And then the coach changed it that if I beat them, then they had to do 10 push-ups, and then things got real competitive.
It's very rewarding to see your skaters do push-ups because you beat them. That's
Yes, yeah. It got, and so I was good friends with some of my teammates, and it would get competitive with us, and there may have been once or twice where a stick came out and grabbed my skate to, maybe trip me or slow me down. But it was like, hey, I get that. All is fair.
Right.
So the next question, what's your favorite all-time goalie mask?
Mike, I know Mike's very opinionated on this one.
On this one, really?
I thought, well, at least style. You always talk to me about the old Jofas, the old Osgood.
Oh man, those are really good. Yep.
And I knew this question was coming too, and I didn't do any research.
That's all right.
For me, obviously, like I love, the new goalie mask. I've got, a couple Bowers and, with the Pro Cat Eyes, and I love, the paint jobs that come up, but they're not like unique anymore. Everyone's doing them, So honestly, like when I think about like true goalie masks that like had some character, like I think of like Jimmy Craig's 1980, like plaster with just the floor leaf clover, like that was it. That mask, you had to sit and have plaster, stuck to your face for however long it took to cure, and you're breathing through straws in your nose, and then you just put a 4-leaf clover on it. Like that's something.
Yeah. Well, and some people don't realize some of those, not even early masks that came out, but even, up through, the mid 90s, they were still doing plaster molds of the face. They just didn't have to put the straws up the nose. They would kind of cut this part out. But they were still doing plaster molds of the face so that they could get it nice and tight. Now with the different foams and everything, they don't have to do that. It can be a little more off the shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think like as far as helmet, like your mask style, Tim Thomas has always had just like the craziest
Yes.
buckets, the craziest, weirdest cage configurations and everything. But one that always sticks out to me, as far as like paint job goes, is Manny Fernandez's 2000, like when initial helmet, which like the bear and the teeth come in and everything.
Yeah,
That's a really great one.
That was a Todd Miska paint job. He's up from the North Branch area. Yeah, that one I think is always overlooked as one of, to me, a classic.
Oh yeah.
Dare I say the word iconic goalie mask? Like that was beautiful. In fact, Miska's son Hunter, he was playing in the Colorado organization last year with the Eagles, and he had that, but with the Colorado colors, and it was so sweet. And then the year before that, Hunter had the Belfort Eagle because his dad painted that one too. But again, it was in Colorado colors with that Colorado C right on the chin. It was like, such a cool looking helmet.
Super sweet.
Yeah. So the next question, what's your favorite rink that you've skated at?
This is a tough one. And I think we're blessed as born and raised Minnesotans of having the just privilege of having like hundreds of rinks to like go to, like moving over here to Wisconsin, there's not that many. And I talked to my wife about, iconic ones over here, and she like, there's maybe one, but iconic emotionally for me would be Freiburger up in Duluth, but iconic like architecture, I would like have to go Heritage in Duluth as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out of state for this one. So actually, I lived up in Winter Park this last winter, which for nobody who knows, it's like a little mountain town, and the rink up there is half enclosed. So like one half is the bleachers, it's enclosed, and then the other half is all open with just big beams. And I skated there a lot, and you skate there at sunset, and you just have mountains in the background behind the net. Sun coming down. It's just absolutely beautiful. It's a really special place to skate.
I was gonna say, sounds miserable. I mean, the sun's gonna get in your eyes, and I mean it's gonna get cold.
Oh, it is both of those things. Sun does get in your eyes, and it is absolutely cold, but it is just beautiful.
No, I can totally understand that, and now it makes me want to go skate there. I was talking to a buddy of mine. He went and skated, and I think it was Austria in the mountains, and it was an outdoor rink. Wow. And he's like, it was like 50 degrees out, but the ice was still great. He's like, I don't know, but it was like, in the pictures of it is just an outdoor rink in the middle of the mountains. Is like, that looks amazing. So the next question, what's your favorite goalie stick that you've ever used? And I had to put in goalie stick because I think Mike would have been like, well, I love the Eastern Synergy.
The Synergy, yes, exactly. Oh, man. Oh,
I still have one for when I skate out on the ponds and coach. Funny story about it. My dad used to teach auto electrification for the fire service, and they would get these cars to tear apart. And they always went through the cars, usually found like, a couple cents and change and random things. And the one day he pops open a trunk and a brand new Synergy socket curve, never used, never taped or anything. Man. So he pulled that thing out, threw it in the car, and when they came up to visit, gave it to me. He's like, Dad, this is pretty sweet. Yeah. He's like, yeah, I don't know if it's a good stick or anything. It's like, yeah, it's like at the time, $125 stick, Dad. He's like, whoa, that's ridiculous. So I still use one when I go skate on the ponds.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've obviously had a lot of goalie sticks, being a goalie for forever. Probably my favorite was the first composite stick Dad ever got me was in Bantams, and I got the Bauer Vapor X50, I think was like the lowest model, and we got it in the Princeton colorway, so it was white, gray, and orange. So, I mean, before that it was, the wooden Eagles and, the old Coho Revolutions with like the gold glittery paddle, but I'd have to go with the X50. Yep. That was definitely like I still have a couple in the garage.
I love that old Eagle stick. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I would have thought being a Minnesotan, you would have had the 50-pound Christians.
No, if we're gonna go old school, I'd have to go Northland. I know Christian because they're there, but God, they were so heavy, and the texture of the paddle was so gross.
See, I gotta disagree. I used them through college. We were still getting them down at St. Mary's in 2003, and but we were also getting CCMs at that point. All the other goalies were using the CCMs, and I was the only one using the Christians. And so at the end of the year, we would get 3 for $20. So senior year is over, and so I was like, all right, get a couple sticks just to have, and took my $20 check to the equipment guy. And he's like, there's a half dozen left, and you're the only one that uses them. Take them, all of them. I was like, nice. Those things last. They didn't last me as long as I thought they would, because we still had intramural hockey. So we had 2 intramural seasons at St. Mary's. You had intramurals when you got on campus, and that was for non-hockey players. And then after the hockey season was over, we had the hockey player intramural season. And I mean, we would have fights and everything else, and it was pretty competitive. And so I think 2 or 3 of them broke during that season. So I left school only with, maybe 4. But yeah, I still had one of those for quite some time.
Nice.
It broke my heart when the last one finally broke.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Mike? What's your favorite goalie stick?
Yeah, I mean, I always like the old Eagle sticks, the little like finger cutout. I always think about those. Like, those are sick.
So I just got this yesterday. It's a from Pro Sock Hockey.
Yeah.
The Colin Delia Pro Return. It's got the trigger grip, and it's first time I'm using one, so I'm pretty excited to try it out.
Very sick.
Yeah, first time I saw it was on an Eagle stick, though.
Mm-hmm. I mean, right now I'm using a CCM Axis 1.9, which I really like. I've only used a couple other sticks. But yeah, I was saying like literally on our last podcast, I'm pretty sure it's lighter than all of my player sticks. It's unreal. The like technology, it's crazy.
Yeah, I have not gone composite yet, mainly because I'm cheap. They're just a heck of a lot more expensive. But I grew up playing with those Christians. The first stick I bought was a Titan, and the thing was a log. I mean, I still have it, straight blade. I was a squirt playing with it, probably a 27-inch paddle. I should never bought the stick, but it was my team's colors. I love that thing. I still have it because Bobby Hall and Stan Mikita actually signed it.
Wow,
that's cool.
So the only problem is they signed it on opposite sides. So it's like you can't really put it on the wall because then you're blocking one of them.
Oh, man.
But so I've always had heavy sticks. So I feel like if I went too light, I would have the problem of not keeping my stick on the ice because I wouldn't know. I need that weight.
You'll need to mount it with like a mirror behind the paddle so you can see it.
Yeah. Or the player sticks, that they have those weights you can put on them for practice. I'll have to put a weight on the blade just to make sure it stays down. Yeah. So the next question is, what's your favorite youth hockey memory?
I know mine, Mike, so I don't know if you want to go.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, mine's pretty obviously. We've talked about it on our podcast. Was taking 3rd place in state in my second year at Bantam B2s. Really, really big season for me. Like personally, went through a lot of ups and downs. We ended up winning our conference, so kind of didn't have to go through the district tourney. So kind of just skipped through there. Then regionals hit, and that was a grind. And we ended up, getting to the state tourney and won our first game, lost our second game to Chaska, which is a real heartbreaker. Mike remembers that game pretty vividly too, but it was definitely a game we should have won. And then we were going to play Wayzata in the champion, but it didn't go that way, and ended up playing Centennial Black into a triple overtime to take 3rd. All those games were actually filmed by one of my teammates' dads, so I actually have a DVD of all those games, and I made a pretty sweet splits glove save from a blue line clap bomb that still lives in my brain rent free. So
We all have those saves that we can just close our eyes and like we can feel ourselves making that save, especially those split glove saves. You can feel that puck, just jerk that glove back a little bit. Those are the best.
I don't know if I can feel it because at the time I had the TPS response glove and blocker, and that glove could fit a basketball in it.
Yeah.
It was absolutely cheating, but I just threw that boat of a catcher out there and got something. But.
Well, I just got new equipment in November for the first time in 21 years, and I had the old Vaughn T2000 Legacy, and like those gloves of the late 90s, early 2000s were huge. I remember when the glove came in, our equipment guy was like, "Yeah, your new glove's in. Thing's got 18 wheels on it just to get it through the door. It's so damn big, But yeah, I mean, it's just huge. And I played with that thing for 21 years, and that was one of my biggest worries was when I put this new smaller glove on, how many pucks are going to go by me because I just instinctively think I've got the glove in the right spot, and they go by, and no more than usual, I'll say, which is quite a bit. Yeah. What about you, Mike? What's the best youth hockey memory?
Yeah, I think there's a particular tournament in Faribault actually that I think about a lot, where it was a big tournament, had a lot of production value. I remember one of the championship game getting to skate on the ice, and they had the whole fog machine out and like lights and everything, and it was just it was a really cool tournament. It was just like a lot of fun. Ended up taking second place in that tournament, which I actually found the medal for it pretty recently, like at the bottom of my hockey bag. I was like, holy crap, I can't believe this thing's still around. Also, I clearly haven't cleaned out my hockey bag since 2006, but
yeah,
it's the same one, which is also embarrassing. It's like the whole floor's fallen out and everything, but it's just
haven't scored a goal since.
Haven't scored a goal since. I actually don't. If I scored a goal during that game, I'd have been shook. But yeah, and it's that, and then also just like all the times, like Josh was saying earlier, just skating on our grandma's lake. Like those moments, I have a lot of just really fond memories of skating out on the lake.
Yeah, not this last winter, but the winter before, we did the backyard ice rink because of COVID, and it was just so fun being out there with the kids, and like I know that's just gonna be one of those core memories they have. So it was worth all of the time and effort and flooding and all of that.
Totally.
Part of me is before we moved to this house 9 years ago, we lived at a house that had this pond behind them, and it was great because all you had to do was shovel. You didn't have to worry about flooding or anything. But one of the neighbors, he had a plow on his four-wheeler, and he would plow the pond before he plowed his driveway, and he would plow it so it was like a full-size rink. But he was also the local fire chief, so he would bring an auger home and a pump, and he would get the water from underneath to flood it every so often. And it was just like great. And that was when I was teaching my kids to skate, and it was great because those early freezes when you can still see the fish swimming underneath, trying to teach the kids how to skate, and they're, face down trying to see the little fish swimming below them. I'm like, come on, guys, grab the chair. I'm trying to teach you here. But, those are the fun times outdoors where it's supposed to be. So what is the best chirp you've heard on the ice, off the ice, directed at you, not directed at you?
Mike's the chirp king between both of us. He will just think of something and text it to me, and Mike's are always super, super random. The best one I've heard, all the best ones I've ever heard have come from the TV show Letterkenny, obviously, because those are phenomenal. But I just this one is just ridiculous. Mike, I think you need to go here.
All right, I'll go. There's one that I've used recently, which is a fun one. It's, what did I say to the guy? It was a guy. He's skating to the sin bin, and I said, Let me remember. I said, "Enjoy the terrarium, you knife-footed ice gremlin," or something like that. That was a nice one. But always, and I talk way more as a tendy than I do skating out. I think
there's that guy Nick the goalie out of Vancouver who his videos are funny.
Yeah.
And some of my old friends are like, we could see you doing this. I'm like, I don't talk when I'm in the net. Like everything's an inner monologue going on in my head, and you don't want to hear that first of all. And they're like, well, when you do talk, where do you yell? And I was like, get the back door, or I'm telling my defenseman on odd man rush whether I want him to take the pass or the shot. It's like my talk during the game isn't all that exciting. It's now what's going on in my head. That's a different story.
Yeah, I've always been a smaller guy, so most of my trash talk comes from the bench where I'm safe. But man, playing goalie, it's just like I can just kind of just talk as much as I want, because I'm like, I got 5 guys on the ice that are going to protect me, so it comes out a little more when I'm playing goalie.
Yeah. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I remember getting chirped a lot, as a goalie. I remember one very specific game in Heritage where the other team's like fan base would switch ends on me just so they could, yell Civ over the boards. I didn't really. I do talk to myself a lot in goal, and I get like a real heavy Canadian accent for some reason. But it's all like, if I ever say anything, it's just like, hey, bud, you're bad, right? Like, like, oh, your coach knows you're out here. Like, just really, really subtle things. I don't know. Mike texted me the other day and he goes, I was at the face off and I told the guy, I leaned in and I go, I just had Chili's before this. And then it's like, I was just like, I don't even know what that means, but
I was playing, it was the fall league championship last year. And I actually had friends on the other team, and I forget what we had for dinner, but it was not sitting well in my stomach. And it's like the end of the second period, and the whistle blows, and I just had gas. And my one teammate comes around the net, and he's like, Jesus Christ, what is wrong with you? And then, so my friends on the other team, it's actually a husband and wife, they come by too, and they're like, come on, that's just ridiculous. Jesus. Like all 3 of them, like, because the period ended and we're skating to our benches and the 3 of them are just yelling at me the whole time. Like, what is wrong with you? Do you have to take it? And it's like, better to get it out and not keep it in me, guys,
It's true.
But it was just funny. All 3 of them were just giving it to me because I had gas.
That's a different strategy. I might have to start coaching now. Just chemical warfare at the crease.
Yeah. So as a coach, you'll appreciate this one. When I was talking to David Hutchins from In Goal, he said the best chirp he heard was one of his son's goalie coaches looked at him and said, "You must be really good at dodgeball."
Ouch. That one stings a little bit.
Yeah, it's like, oh, and you hear that from your goalie coach. And
it's tough.
When I was in college, I think it was my junior year, because my niece, it's hard to think or believe, but she was just a baby when I went to college, and now she's in her second year of law school. But we had the varsity game on a Friday night, and so I'm sitting with my mom and my dad and my niece behind the visiting goalie, and I'm teaching her. It's like, no, the other team, when their goalie's here, you got to, yell at them and be like, hey, goalie, you suck, and this and that. Next morning, we have our JV game, and I'm playing, and she's sitting behind me, and all of a sudden I hear her little voice between the crack and the 2 panes of glass. It's like, hey, goalie, you suck. It's like, yeah, I deserve that, teaching her that one. I mean, that was probably the one chirp that like hit the heart the most, because it was from like a 2-year-old, and I taught her that one, but it's like, oh, Jesus, I deserve that one. My mom and dad thought it was hilarious. Right?
Oh yeah,
that's what you get for teaching her how to talk like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next question: what's the worst post-game beer you've had?
Is there a worst? I mean, any beer's great after a game. I don't think there's a bad one.
I would have to agree with that. If there's any bad post game beer, I would say it's just gonna be a type of beer. I try to avoid the heavy beers. I think this is a pretty Minnesotan response here, but Mick Golden is just a classic post game beer for me.
It is. Yeah.
If it's warm, that's kind of a bummer, but like any beer post game feels so good.
To me, the warm beer is probably the closest to a bad post game beer, and that's typically my answer. We did have a new younger kid on the team it wasn't a new younger kid. It was when he finally turned 21, he brought the beer.
Yep.
And he brought a 12, and I've shared this one on the podcast. I think it was a 12 pack of Busch Light, and it was warm. And we're like, you've been around the team a while. You can do better. And he's like, well, yeah, it'll be good after the game. We're like, no, it won't, because we're not leaving you one for after the game. And like all of us older guys quick cracked one open and downed it before the game. Like, you do not get a beer after the game because of the way you've acted. So the next week he brought Mick Golden, and it was cold.
Beautiful.
Yeah. In fact, my buddy Landon, who runs the Soda Stick apparel company, has a Mick Golden pond hockey T-shirt and hat and socks and stuff. It's just like, yeah, it's that Minnesota post-game beer.
That's the one.
That or Coors Light is what guys bring.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm a bit of a beer connoisseur, and to me, those light, cheap beers are probably the best ones right after the game, because they are mostly water to begin with, so they're nice and crisp and refreshing. And then when you get to the parking lot for the parking lot beers, that's when you can get into the IPAs and the stouts and all those other ones. But it's like right after the game, those light beers are probably the best ones because they're darn near water anyway.
Yep.
So when you guys tape your goalie sticks, you go heel to toe or toe to heel?
Heel to toe, baby.
Okay, so you are in the majority. Had two different guests say if you go toe to heel, you're a psychopath. I don't necessarily agree with them on that level, but yeah, you're definitely.
I will make an addition though. I also do the strip, parallel underneath.
Yes.
Growing up in a frugal family, you had to put an extra strip of tape to just, keep that stick durable a little bit longer.
That's how I knew it. That's how I know at some point in time you used a Christian goalie stick. Because Christian goalie stick users started that because that heel would just absorb water and start to go like that.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's the dead giveaway. When you see a beer league goalie putting that strip on there, it's like, oh, so when did you use the Christian goalie sticks? They make them again, and I kind of want to buy one because I know they're not making them the same way. I want to see how good they are now without that fiberglass reinforced sleeve around it. Because, that was the thing. Was that at the time the fiberglass reinforcement, because they lasted forever. It's just you had to put it in the vice strip every couple weeks to make the heel. Yeah. So, what is your favorite number to wear and why?
Mike, I want you to answer this because you're new to the goalie number scene here.
I mean, I have never really cared what number I've worn all throughout youth hockey. Oftentimes it's like you just get what you get, and I've never really cared that much. But if I have the choice, I pick 2-9 for Flower.
It's not a bad one.
It's a little non-traditional too.
Not really, though. I mean, in the 80s and 90s, 29 was a very normal goalie number. It was usually the backup goalie that had it.
Which is fitting.
But not all backups had them, but yeah, it's a good goalie number, though.
Yeah, some of the episodes, you get some of the classic answers of, I had to wear this number because that's the only number, in youth jerseys, so like I've been the one when I played midget A hockey in Peoria. I believe I was 0. That was an option. But when I hit high school and I could choose, I went 32 right away. And a little bit was, I can't remember if it was Rolston that had 32 early on in the Wild. Because I know Manny Fernandez was 35, but for some reason that 32, Jonathan Quick, Backstrom, some of those guys that I really liked watching. That was just the number for me. So I'm big 3-2 over here.
My first Blackhawks jersey I got, it was a squirt. So when I got it named and lettered, I got my last name on the back, and I chose 32 because at the time Jimmy Waite was 29, Eddie Balfour was 30, and Dominik Hasek was 31. So I was like, 32, I'll be the next goalie in line. And they traded Hasek, and we know how that turned out. But I can't fault the Hawks at the time because you had Eddie Balfour, the Vezina winning goal. I mean, they just could have gotten more for Hasek, but nobody knew what he'd turn into. Mm-hmm. So the last question, what advice do you have for young goalies?
I feel like as a coach, I should be on the ball here. Truly, honestly, it's the advice that I give pretty much constantly, and we've already talked about on this episode, is control the things you can control. And I kind of try to change the mindset, because control the things you can control. At first glance, it seems like you're controlling things that are happening to you. But I always try to tell goalies to switch that mindset, change the things that you're doing. You can control yourself. So go out and get extra practice, take more shots, do the morning run or morning bike. Don't let things happen to you. Also take control and do things for yourself. So that's a lot of my advice is just, let things slide that happen to you, but also take your life in your own hands and go and, make something of it.
I think that's super important. I'll hit a different one. I think just really enjoy and have fun. Like, this is the most fun game. There's a reason why people play it their entire lives. Like, there's so many times where I'm focusing so much on improving and all of these things, and I forget just how much fun the game is. And just like continue to enjoy it. And there's so many times when we've all, I think, done hobbies, and it's like, I don't really enjoy this anymore. The fun can get sucked out of things when you take stuff a little too seriously, and you take yourself a little too seriously. But if you can just continue to have fun and continue to enjoy the game, you'll be able to play it forever and get a lot out of it.
That's a great point. And I think, I know for myself, when I remind myself that I'm out there to have fun, I wind up playing better. Just instinctively, I play better when I remind myself that I'm out here to have fun, and it almost takes the pressure off. Mm-hmm. Well, the important question now is, where can folks find you on social media so they can continue to follow you guys and find out about new episodes?
Yeah, absolutely. So the podcast is on Spotify at Pillow Talk by CWGA. We also have a Facebook page. It's going to be under the same thing, Pillow Talk by CWGA. We're probably most active on our Instagram. Again, Pillow Talk by CWGA, and all of those places have links to listen to the episodes. We do video episodes, so you can see our beautiful faces if you choose. It's sometimes not great, but
and I think also following Central Wisconsin Goalie Academy too, because Josh posts a lot of really good stuff. Working with goalies and things that I get takeaways from all the time of just little tips and drills and all that kind of stuff is really good too.
That's awesome. And I'll make sure to link to them in the show notes too. But guys, hey, it's been fun chatting with you. It's fun to have two brothers on rather than just one goalie. And thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
It was joy. Thanks.
As a parent, I love how close Mike and Josh are as brothers. The fact that they lean on each other when it comes to getting better as goalies is just awesome to me. Be sure to follow Pillow Talk by CWGA on Instagram at Pillow Talk by CWGA, no spaces. And follow Central Wisconsin Goalie Academy at the same name, no spaces again. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, simply by searching for Wash Up Goalie, and I'll pop up. Visit washupgoalie.com for some great hockey-related content, my beer league hockey video highlights, and of course, all podcast episodes. If you want some Wash Up Goalie or Tendy Talk apparel, be sure to visit my Threadless shop by clicking the merchandise link on the website. I mean, after all, Christmas is coming. Time to start shopping. If you like this podcast, go listen to the BLPA Big Show. It's the OG BLPA Podcast Network show where a couple of beer league players talk beer league hockey, draft experience shenanigans, and exploits from around the game. Be sure to check out the full lineup of hockey-related podcasts on the Hockey Podcast Network as well. There are too many shows to list here, but shows like the 50 Years Ago in Hockey podcast, the Chell Squared podcast, and the Hockey Hacks podcast can all be found. If you're looking for something good to read, get yourself a subscription to the Vintage Tendy magazine. Published quarterly, the magazine takes a deep dive into an 80s and 90s era goalie. In the first 5 issues, they've covered Felix Potvin, Grant Fuhr, Tim Shovelday, Jocelyn Tebow, Ken Reggett, John Van Beesbrook, and episode 20 guest, mask painter Don Strauss. I need to thank the band Zambonis for allowing me to use their music on all my episodes. You can download their music on iTunes or listen wherever you stream music from. As always, I'm working on lining up other goalies to talk to. If you are a goalie or have connections to a goalie who I should talk to, shoot me an email at washupgoalie39@gmail.com or send me a DM on social media. And let's not forget, if you are a brand that wants to sponsor the show, be sure to reach out to me. Be happy to talk. And finally, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, and comment on the podcast platform you're listening on. It's a quick action on your part that helps others find Tendy Talk. So, until next time, keep your stick on the ice and your body square to the puck.
Checked out Ketchell's Pond. He calls up Tommy Taylor. Tom said the pond, it froze right over. So get the nets and lace your skates and get the hot chocolate for your mom today. Get home. Tarkin.
Yeah, dude.
Hey, have you checked out the pond today?
It's funny you ask. I was just down there this morning.
Yeah, any good news?
Well, Dave,